The thing about finding bodies in the wilderness is that you're supposed to report them immediately. That's what they teach you in search and rescue training. Call it in, secure the scene, don't touch anything. I'd followed that protocol 17 times over my 23 years with parks and wildlife. But on that October morning in 2019, standing at the edge of a ravine 40 miles from the nearest trail in the Cascade Mountains, I broke every rule I'd ever learned. The smell hit me first. Not death exactly, though there was some of that too. It was mustier, like wet dog mixed with something copper-sharp that made my sinuses burn. I'd been tracking what I thought was an injured elk for 3 hours, following blood spots on moss and broken branches at shoulder height. The trail led down into a cleft in the mountainside I'd never noticed before, despite knowing this section of forest better than my own backyard. The ravine opened up like a wound in the earth, maybe 30 feet across at its widest point, walls of dark basalt streaked with moisture, even though it hadn't rained in 9 days. Douglas firs leaned over the edges, their roots hanging down like reaching fingers. Morning fog still pooled in the bottom, thick enough that I couldn't see more than shapes through the grey. I should have turned back when I saw the first backpack. It was orange, one of those ultralight models that thru hikers favor, hanging from a branch about 15 feet down. The fabric had that weathered look that comes from seasons of exposure, faded and torn in places. But the frame was intact, and I could see something dark-stained pressed against the mesh pocket. A wallet, maybe, or a phone. My radio crackled with static. This far into the backcountry, I was well out of tower range, but I tried anyway. "Dispatch, this is Reynolds, badge 773, requesting backup at GPS coordinates." I rattled off the numbers from my handheld unit. Nothing came back but white noise. The blood trail led down a natural ramp of exposed rock along the ravine's north wall. My boots found purchase on the damp stone, years of experience guiding my feet to the stable spots. About halfway down, the fog started to thin, and I could make out more shapes, more backpacks, dozens of them, scattered across the ravine floor like discarded shells, blue ones, red ones, camouflage patterns, internal frames, external frames, day packs, and expedition-sized monsters. Some looked decades old. Others could have been dropped yesterday. I stopped moving, stopped breathing for a moment. My mind tried to process what I was seeing, running through rational explanations. Maybe it was a dump site where people ditched stolen gear. Maybe local kids had been collecting lost equipment for years as some kind of shrine or art project. Maybe. Then I saw the bones. They were arranged in neat piles against the eastern wall, sorted by type. Femurs in one stack, skulls in another. The organization was deliberate, almost respectful. Some still had scraps of clothing clinging to them. A boot here with the foot bones still inside. A jacket there, shredded but recognizable as Gore-Tex, expensive stuff. My hand went to my service weapon, a Glock 19 that had never been drawn in the field. The weight of it was reassuring for about 2 seconds before I realized how useless 40 rounds would be if I was dealing with a serial killer who'd been operating out here for decades. Or worse, if this was some kind of cult situation with multiple perpetrators. I keyed my radio again, whispering now. "Emergency. Officer needs assistance. Multiple victims located." Static. My GPS unit showed I was technically still within park boundaries, but in a pocket of wilderness so remote it didn't even have a designation. The nearest trail was the Pacific Crest, 8 miles east. The nearest road, 12 miles south. Movement caught my eye, not in the ravine, but on the opposite wall, a shadow shifting between the trees, too large to be a person, too upright to be a bear. I raised my binoculars, hands trembling slightly as I focused on the tree line. Nothing. Just Douglas fir and hemlock swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel down in the ravine. But the feeling of being watched crawled over my skin like cold water. Every instinct developed through 2 decades of wilderness work screamed at me to leave. Now, don't walk, run, get to the truck, get to town, get back up. Instead, I climbed down. I tell myself it was duty, that as a ranger, I had an obligation to identify victims, to bring closure to families who'd been waiting years for answers. But if I'm honest, it was something else. The arrangement of the bones, the careful sorting of the gear, none of it matched any human pathology I knew. No serial killer catalogues his victims' bones like a museum exhibit. No cult treats equipment with that kind of systematic organization. The fog had lifted enough by the time I reached the bottom that I could see the full scope of it. There had to be at least 60 backpacks, maybe more. Tents, too, still in their stuff sacks, lined up along the base of the north wall. Sleeping bags, camp stoves, water filters, all arranged by type and condition. It looked like the back room of an outdoor retailer, if that retailer also collected human remains. I approached the nearest cluster of gear, careful not to disturb anything. The first wallet I found belonged to Rebecca Morrison, age 24, from Portland. Reported missing in June 2003 while hiking alone in the Three Sisters Wilderness, about 70 miles from here. The second ID was Thomas Chen, 31, from Seattle. Vanished during a camping trip in 1998, supposedly near Mount Baker, over 100 miles north. My hands shook as I photographed each ID, each piece of distinctive gear. The camera felt like it weighed 50 pounds. These weren't just victims from this park, or even this region. Someone or something had been collecting missing hikers from all over the Pacific Northwest. A sound made me freeze. Not quite a howl, not quite human. It started low, almost below the range of hearing, a vibration I felt in my chest before my ears registered it. Then it climbed, becoming something between a scream and a roar that raised every hair on my body. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the ravine walls until I couldn't tell which direction to run. The logical part of my brain, the part trained in wildlife biology, tried to categorize it. Mountain lion? No, too deep. Bear? Wrong vocal structure entirely. Elk? Not even close. The sound was primate-like, but also wrong, like someone had taken a gorilla's chest-beating vocalization and stretched it into something that shouldn't exist. I backed toward the ramp, hand on my weapon, eyes scanning the rim of the ravine. The bones seemed to watch me retreat, empty sockets tracking my movement. A child's shoe caught my eye, pink and purple, size maybe 6. I thought of my niece, safe in her bedroom in Bend, and moved faster. The vocalization came again, closer this time. I could hear breathing between the calls, deep and rhythmic, like bellows in a blacksmith shop. Whatever was making that sound had lung capacity beyond any animal I knew. It was moving along the southern rim, paralleling my escape route. I gave up on stealth and ran. The ramp was slick with moisture, and I went down hard on my knee, tearing through my uniform pants and leaving skin on the basalt. Pain flared hot and sharp, but adrenaline pushed me back to my feet. Above me, branches cracked like gunshots, not from wind, from weight. Something massive was moving through the canopy, and it was faster than me. I made it to the top of the ravine and sprinted for the game trail I'd followed in. Behind me, that impossible sound erupted again, so close I could feel the air pressure change. My training told me not to run from predators, that it triggered their chase instinct. But this wasn't any predator I'd been trained to handle. The trail split ahead, and I went left on instinct, muscle memory from 100 patrols guiding me toward the nearest logging road. Branches whipped at my face, drawing blood. My radio bounced against my hip, useless weight I couldn't spare the seconds to ditch. The forest blurred into green and brown, punctuated by the thunder of my heartbeat. Then, suddenly, silence. No pursuit sounds, no breathing, no breaking branches, just the normal forest noise slowly returning. Squirrels chattering, jays calling, a woodpecker's rhythmic hammering. I slowed to a jog, then a walk, gasping for breath. My knee screamed with every step, blood soaking through the torn fabric. I didn't stop moving until I reached my truck, parked at the abandoned Cascade Creek trailhead. My hands fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. Only when I was inside with the engine running did I look back at the forest. A figure stood at the tree line. Even from 200 yards away, it was obviously too large to be human. Broad shoulders that would have had to turn sideways to fit through a normal doorway. Arms that hung past its knees. And tall. Christ, so tall that its head was level with branches I knew were 9 feet off the ground. It didn't move, just stood there, watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I reached for my camera, some desperate part of my mind thinking about evidence, about proof. But when I raised it to my eye, the figure was gone, like it had never been there at all. The only sign was a single branch still swaying, where nothing but wind should have disturbed it. I drove out of there doing 60 on a road, rated for 25 maximum. Didn't slow down until I hit pavement, didn't stop until I reached the ranger station in Darrington. Sat in my truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what to report, how to report it. 60+ missing persons found. That part was easy. That would bring in the FBI, state police, search teams, forensics units. The media would descend like vultures. Families would get closure. But they'd also tear that wilderness apart looking for answers. They'd find the bones, the gear, everything I'd photographed. And they'd find whatever had been collecting them, whatever had watched me leave, whatever had decided, for reasons I couldn't understand, to let me go. I thought about Rebecca Morrison, 24 forever, Thomas Chen, who never made it home to Seattle, the child with the pink and purple shoes. They deserved justice. Their families deserved answers. But I also thought about that vocalization, unlike anything in any wildlife handbook. That massive figure, standing upright with an intelligence behind its observation that was absolutely clear. The careful organization of belongings that suggested not a killer's trophies, but something else. Something like remembrance or respect. My phone had signal now. I could call it in. Should call it in. Every regulation, every oath I'd taken, every moral principle demanded I report what I'd found. I sat there for another hour, engine running, heater blasting to stop the shaking that wasn't entirely from cold. The photos on my camera seemed to burn against my chest, where I'd tucked it inside my jacket. Evidence that would either make me famous or destroy my career, depending on whether anyone believed what else I'd seen. Finally, I walked into the station, sat down at my desk, pulled up the missing persons database, and started typing a report that included everything about the ravine, the victims, the evidence. Everything except the part that mattered most, the part that no one would believe anyway. I listed the cause of the victims' gathering as unknown, left out any mention of what had been watching me, what had let me go, what was still out there, 40 miles from the nearest trail, in a place no one had any reason to visit. The FBI arrived the next morning. By noon, the ravine was crawling with investigators. By evening, the first news vans showed up. Within a week, 63 families had answers they'd been waiting decades for. The official report blamed a serial killer, likely deceased, who had used the remote ravine as a dumping ground. Case closed, except for the paperwork. But I knew they were wrong. I'd gone back one more time, 2 weeks after the discovery, while the investigation was winding down. Not officially, not in uniform, just me and a borrowed four-wheeler, approaching from a different direction. I left the bike a mile out and hiked in, moving as quietly as I'd learned to move in 23 years of wilderness work. The ravine had been stripped clean. Every bone, every piece of equipment, every trace of evidence removed by the forensics teams. Yellow tape still marked the perimeter, already fading in the mountain weather. But something else had been added. At the exact spot where I'd first seen the backpack, fresh marks scarred the basalt. Not claw marks, not tool marks, knuckle prints, pressed deep into solid rock with impossible force, and below them, scratched with something sharp into the stone, two words in crude but clear letters: "You knew." I never filed a report about that second visit, never told anyone about the words carved in stone, never mentioned the tuft of reddish-brown hair I found snagged on a branch at exactly my eye level, placed there deliberately for me to find. I kept that hair in an evidence bag in my home safe for 3 years before I finally burned it, because whoever or whatever had been collecting those hikers for 20 years wasn't done. The only thing that had changed was now it knew that I knew, and we both understood what would happen if I ever told the whole truth. The official story is that I took early retirement in 2020, citing stress from the discovery of the Morrison Chen mass burial site, as the media had dubbed it. Moved to Arizona for the dry climate and to be closer to my sister. Started a consulting business doing wilderness safety training for corporate groups. All of that is technically true, but it's not the truth. The truth is that I left because I couldn't stand it anymore. Couldn't stand driving past that trailhead every day, knowing what was out there. Couldn't stand the weight of the family's gratitude when they thanked me for finding their loved ones. Couldn't stand the nightmares where that impossible vocalization echoed through my skull. But mostly, I couldn't stand the waiting. Every missing hiker report that came across my desk made me wonder if they'd end up in that ravine or somewhere else just like it. Every time I went into the backcountry, I felt watched. Every breaking branch, every unexplained sound, every shadow that didn't quite fit had me reaching for my weapon. Arizona is better. No old growth forests here. No fog-filled ravines. No places where something that shouldn't exist could hide for decades, collecting the lost and the foolish, organizing their belongings with an intelligence that suggested purposes I didn't want to understand. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the desert wind sounds almost like Douglas firs swaying, I think about that figure at the tree line. I wonder if it's still out there, still watching trails and campsites, still making choices about who gets to leave and who becomes part of its collection. I wonder if it remembers me the way I remember it, and I wonder if I made the right choice, keeping it secret, protecting it, in a way, or if those 63 victims deserved more than the convenient lie we told about their deaths, if their families deserved to know that something impossible had killed their loved ones, that the forests they'd loved had betrayed them to something that shouldn't exist. I don't have answers to those questions, probably never will. All I have is the knowledge that burns in my chest every day like acid, the weight of impossible truth that I'll carry until I die. My niece is 17 now. She wants to hike the Pacific Crest Trail after she graduates high school. Says it'll be a great gap year adventure before college. Shows me her gear list, asks for advice about resupply points and water sources. I tell her about the weather patterns, the elevation changes, the beautiful sections near Crater Lake and Mount Hood. I help her plan her resupply boxes, recommend the best ultralight tent, the most reliable water filter. I do everything an experienced uncle should do, but I also make sure her route stays east of the Cascades, well east, and I don't tell her why certain sections are marked on my maps with red X's that have nothing to do with official trail closures, because some secrets are like cancer. They eat you from the inside out, consuming healthy tissue until there's nothing left but the disease. But unlike cancer, you can't cut them out or radiate them away. You just carry them, day after day, year after year, until they become part of you. The investigator who led the FBI team, a sharp woman named Agent Sarah Vasquez, called me last month. 3 years since the discovery, and she still had questions. Not official questions, personal ones. Something about that case never sat right, she said. The organization of the remains, the victim selection pattern, the geographic spread. None of it matches any known serial killer profile. I made non-committal sounds, the kind you learn to make when you're holding back truth like vomit. You were there first, she continued. You saw it before we processed everything. Was there anything else? Anything that didn't make it into the report? The word yes burned in my throat. Yes, there was something else. Something that still wakes me at 3 in the morning, sweat-soaked and gasping. Something that made me abandon a career I loved and move 1,200 miles away. Nothing that would help the investigation, I said instead, which was true in its way. What I knew wouldn't help anyone. It would only open doors better left locked. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, 12 more hikers have gone missing in that general area since 2020. Different parks, different trails, but all within a 100-mile radius of that ravine. My hand tightened on the phone until the plastic creaked. The official position is that they're unrelated disappearances, she went on, but I've been mapping them. They form a pattern, like something's ranging wider now, like it's looking for something, or someone. I wanted to hang up, wanted to throw the phone across the room and pretend I'd never gotten the call. Instead, I forced my voice to stay level. People go missing in the wilderness all the time. It's a dangerous place. Yes, she agreed. It is. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, considering her next words. If you ever remember anything else, she said finally, anything at all, you have my number. After she hung up, I sat in my Phoenix apartment, staring at the blank wall where I used to hang my trail maps. 12 more missing, ranging wider, looking for something, or someone. I'd like to believe it's coincidence, that those 12 hikers just got lost, fell off cliffs, drowned in rivers, met any of the dozen natural deaths the wilderness offers. But I know better. I know that somewhere out there, in a new ravine or cave or hidden valley, someone is carefully arranging backpacks by color and size, sorting bones with a precision that speaks to intelligence far beyond animal instinct. The Cascade Mountains cover over 7 million acres. That's a lot of space for something to hide. A lot of dark valleys where hikers might wander off trail and never come back. A lot of places where the trees grow so thick and tall that satellites can't penetrate the canopy. I think about going back sometimes, not to the ravine, that's been cleaned out and catalogued and filed away, but to the deep woods around it, to look for signs, tracks, evidence that I'm not crazy, that what I saw was real. But I know what I'd find. Nothing, if I was lucky. Everything, if I wasn't. There's a reason humans developed an instinctive fear of the dark forest. A reason every culture has stories about things that live in the spaces between civilization and wilderness. We've forgotten those reasons in our modern world of GPS and satellite phones and emergency beacons. We think we've conquered nature, made it safe, manageable, known. We're wrong. I learned that on an October morning in 2019, in a ravine that doesn't appear on any map. Learned it looking into eyes that held intelligence but no humanity. Learned it in the careful arrangement of bones that suggested something beyond animal behavior, but not quite human either. The indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest have words for what I saw. Stesilis, Saskets, Seiteco, names that predate European contact by thousands of years, stories that were dismissed as myth and superstition by colonizers who thought they knew better. Turns out the colonizers were wrong about that too. I've read every account I can find now, every historical sighting, every traditional story, every modern encounter that made it past the ridicule and disbelief. The patterns are there if you know how to look. The same impossible vocalizations, the same massive bipedal figure, the same intelligence that watches and waits and decides who lives and who doesn't. Most encounters end with the witness running away, terrified but unharmed. The creatures, whatever they are, seem to avoid humans when possible, prefer to remain hidden, mythical, safe from our need to capture and study and display everything we don't understand. But sometimes they don't avoid us. Sometimes hikers disappear in ways that can't be explained by exposure or accident. Sometimes The wilderness takes people and keeps them. I think about Rebecca Morrison a lot. 24 years old, hiking alone, probably feeling brave and free and connected to nature. Did she see it coming? Did she have time to be afraid? Or did it happen so fast that she simply ceased to be, became another possession in a collection she'd never understand? The pink and purple shoe haunts me most. A child, probably no more than 6 or 7. What was a child doing that deep in the wilderness? Who brought them there? Why didn't they make it out? The FBI calculated that the 63 victims had disappeared over a span of 22 years, based on the identification they recovered. But some of the bones were older, much older, predating modern equipment and synthetic fabrics. How long had that ravine been used? How many others had there been before we started keeping detailed missing persons records? How many other ravines are out there, unfound? Agent Vasquez was right about the pattern. I've been mapping it too, unofficially, using public missing persons data and topographical surveys. The disappearances cluster around specific areas, all of them remote, all of them with certain geographical features. Deep valleys, old growth forest, water sources, caves or overhangs for shelter, territory markers maybe, or hunting grounds. The rational part of my brain, the part trained in science and logic, rebels against what I'm suggesting. It sounds insane, cryptozoological nonsense, the kind of thing that gets you laughed out of academic conferences and regulatory meetings. But I was there. I saw it, stood close enough to observe the rise and fall of its breathing, the way its weight shifted as it watched me, the decision-making process visible in its posture as it chose to let me leave. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not that it existed, but that it chose to let me go. That implies consciousness, reasoning, judgment. It implies that every one of those 63 victims was also a choice. Why them? Why not me? I've gone over that morning 1,000 times, looking for the variable that saved me. Was it because I was armed? Because I was in uniform? Because I ran instead of investigating further? Or was it something else? Some criteria I'll never understand. The hair I burned 3 years ago would have answered so many questions. DNA analysis could have proven what I saw, could have validated every traditional story, every dismissed sighting, every witness who was called crazy or attention-seeking. But it also would have destroyed them. Whatever they are, however many are left, they survive by remaining hidden, by being myth instead of fact. The moment science proves they exist, they're doomed. Habitat protection laws won't save them from trophy hunters and specimen collectors. Nothing would. So I burned the evidence and kept the secret, made myself complicit in 63 deaths by staying silent about their true cause, became guardian of a truth that no one wants and everyone needs. The desert sunrise outside my window is painting the mountains pink and gold, beautiful in its way, but empty. No mysteries here, no shadows between the trees that don't belong, no sounds that shouldn't exist, just rock and sand and sparse vegetation under an endless sky. It's safer here, easier, but it's not living. It's just existing, day after day, carrying knowledge that isolates me more effectively than any physical distance. My phone buzzes. Text from my niece. She sent a photo from a training hike in the North Cascades, standing at a viewpoint with mountains stretching behind her into blue distance. She's smiling, victorious, alive with the joy of wild places. The location tag makes my blood freeze. She's less than 10 miles from that ravine. 10 miles from where something impossible watched me run away. 10 miles from becoming another missing person statistic. I call her immediately. She answers on the 3rd ring, breathless from exertion. "Hey, Uncle Mike, did you see my picture? Where exactly are you?" I keep my voice calm through practiced effort. "Thunder Creek Trail. It's gorgeous up here. We're thinking about camping near the basin tonight." Thunder Creek. I know it. Know that it connects to a network of game trails that lead west, toward places that don't appear on maps, toward territories that belong to things we've forgotten how to see. You should head back, I say. Weather's supposed to turn bad tonight. Really? The forecast looked clear when we checked this morning. I'm already pulling up weather data on my laptop, looking for something, anything, to justify my warning. But she's right. High pressure system. Clear skies predicted for the next 3 days. Uncle Mike? You still there? Listen to me. I drop all pretense of calm. You need to get out of there, now. Don't camp, don't explore, just go back to your car and leave. Silence on her end. Then, quieter. What's wrong? What aren't you telling me? Everything, I want to say. I'm not telling you everything. Just trust me, I say instead. Please, that area isn't safe. Why? What happened there? The question hangs between us across 1,200 miles of distance. I could tell her, could break 3 years of silence and speak the truth, could save her by destroying her love of the wilderness forever. There was an incident, I say finally. Years ago, wildlife. Just please don't camp there. She sighs, teenage frustration clear even through the phone. Fine, we'll head back, but you're being super weird about this. I know, I'm sorry. Just be careful, okay? And stick to the main trails. Always do, she lies, and hangs up. I sit there holding my dead phone, wondering if I've said enough, if she'll actually leave. If whatever watched me that October morning also watches hikers on Thunder Creek Trail, measuring them against criteria I'll never understand. The sun climbs higher, filling my apartment with light that feels hollow compared to the filtered green of old-growth forest. Even after 3 years and 1,200 miles, part of me is still standing in that ravine, looking at carefully sorted bones, feeling eyes on my back. Maybe that's my real punishment, not nightmares or isolation or the weight of secrets. It's knowing that the wilderness I loved, dedicated my life to protecting, harbors something that makes all our conservation efforts pointless. We're not saving it for future generations. We're saving it for them, for things that were here before us and will be here after we're gone, if we're lucky. My laptop pings with a news alert. Another hiker missing, this time in Oregon. Silver Falls State Park, popular trail, experienced outdoorsman who knows the area well. The search and rescue teams are baffled. No signs of struggle, no obvious hazards, just gone between one trail camera and the next. I close the laptop. I don't need to read more. Don't need to see the young man's photo, learn his hopes and dreams, hear his family's desperate pleas for information. He's either dead or he's not, either collected or still wandering. Either way, there's nothing I can do about it. That's what I tell myself anyway, what I've been telling myself for 3 years. But Agent Vasquez was right about the pattern expanding, the territories overlapping. Something's changing in the ecosystem of the Pacific Northwest, and it's not climate change or habitat loss or any of the factors we track in our careful scientific models. It's them, moving more, ranging wider, taking greater risks, looking for something or someone. I think they're looking for me, not to harm me. If they wanted that, they could have done it 3 years ago. But to understand why I kept their secret, why I burned the evidence, why I protected them at the cost of my career, my peace of mind, my sense of self. Maybe they're curious, maybe they're grateful, maybe they're angry that I brought the FBI to their careful collection, destroyed decades of patient work. Or maybe I'm paranoid, seeing patterns where none exist, assigning intention to what could be random chance. But I don't think so, because last week I found something in my Phoenix apartment that shouldn't exist. A piece of basalt, rough and dark, about the size of my thumb. It was sitting on my kitchen counter when I came home from a consultation. Doors locked, windows sealed, alarm system armed, and showing no breaches. The rock was from that ravine. I recognized the mineral composition, the texture. More than that, I recognized the impossible knuckle print pressed into one surface. fresh. So fresh the stone dust still clung to the ridges. It traveled 1,200 miles to get here, through locked doors and armed security, placed precisely where I'd see it, where I'd understand. A message, a reminder, a warning, or maybe an invitation. I keep the stone in my pocket now, feel its weight against my leg with every step. A tangible reminder that distance means nothing to something that can cross 100 miles of wilderness without leaving tracks, except when it wants to. Sometimes I dream about going back, not to investigate or document or prove anything, just to stand in that forest again, knowing what I know, and see if they'd show themselves. If we could find some way to coexist, sharing the wild places without fear or violence. But that's fantasy. The real world doesn't work that way. The real world demands evidence and explanations and neat categories for everything that exists. The real world would put them in cages or display cases or research facilities, would study them until there was nothing mysterious left, then argue about whether they deserve protection or exploitation. Better they stay myth. Better the families believe their loved ones were victims of a human killer, now presumably dead. Better the wilderness keeps its last secret. My phone rings. Agent Vasquez again. I let it go to voicemail, but she doesn't leave a message. Just calls again and again. On the fourth call, I answer. We found another one, she says without preamble. Another ravine, fresher this time. Bodies from the last 3 years, the ones that went missing after you found the first site. My mouth goes dry. Where? Olympic Peninsula, about 80 miles from the original location. Same organization pattern, same careful arrangement, but there's something else. I wait, the basalt stone burning against my leg. There's a message, she says, carved into a tree at the entrance. Words, in English, crude but clear. What does it say? She pauses. I can hear papers rustling, other voices in the background. Where is he? That's all. Just, where is he? Repeated 17 times down the trunk of a Douglas fir. Letters 3 inches tall, carved deep enough to reach the heartwood. I close my eyes. 17 times. One for each year I'd patrolled those forests before 2019. They'd been watching me that long. Knew my patterns, my territory, my routines. And now, they wanted to know where I'd gone. Agent Vasquez. I know you saw something, she interrupts. Something you didn't report. Something that made you leave Washington and never come back. I'm not asking you to make an official statement. I'm asking you, person to person, what are we dealing with? The truth sits on my tongue like poison. I could spit it out, let her carry the weight for a while, share the burden of impossible knowledge. But I think about those 17 carved messages, that piece of basalt that traveled 1,200 miles, the intelligence that let me go when it could have added me to its collection. I don't know, I lie. I wish I could help you. She's quiet for a long moment. Then, if you change your mind, if you remember anything, if you see anything, I'll call, I promise, knowing I won't. After she hangs up, I book a flight to Seattle. Leave tomorrow, return date open. I tell myself I'm just going to look, to verify what she found, to see those carved words for myself. But I pack the basalt stone, pack my old hiking gear, dusty from 3 years of storage, pack the photos I never deleted from my camera, the ones that show impossible footprints and carefully sorted bones, because they're looking for me, actively, urgently, carving questions into trees. And maybe it's hubris, or curiosity, or just exhaustion from carrying this secret, but I think I need to answer. The flight is turbulent over the Cascades. I watch the mountains pass below, snow-capped peaks and hidden valleys, millions of acres of forest that look uniform from above, but hide complexities we've barely begun to catalogue. Somewhere down there, between the trees and shadows, something impossible is waiting. The Olympic Peninsula is rain-soaked when I arrive, the temperate rainforest living up to its name. I rent a truck, the same model I used to drive for parks and wildlife, and head west toward the coordinates Agent Vasquez had mentioned. She hadn't been exact professional discretion, keeping her from sharing active crime scene details, but I know how to read between the lines, know which valleys fit the profile. The FBI presence is obvious from miles away. Helicopters circling, their rhythmic thrum echoing off the mountains. News vans already gathering at the closest road access. Vultures drawn to tragedy. I avoid them all, taking logging roads that don't appear on civilian maps. Paths I remember from interagency cooperation, back when this was my territory too. I park 5 miles from where I calculate the scene must be, far enough that no one will stumble across my vehicle. The rain has stopped, but the trees still drip steadily, a percussion that masks footsteps. Good for staying hidden, good for being stalked. The hike in is muscle memory, my body remembering the rhythm of wilderness travel, even after 3 years of desert living. The forest feels different, though, heavier, like the air itself is thick with anticipation. Every shadow could hide watching eyes. Every sound could be deliberately made to test my response. I find the perimeter of the FBI scene before I find the ravine itself. Yellow tape strung between trees, the occasional agent standing guard, looking wet and miserable. I circle wide, using game trails and drainage channels to avoid detection. My uniform would have gotten me past the tape 3 years ago. Now I'm just another civilian who doesn't belong here. The ravine is smaller than the first one, more of a cleft in the hillside than a true valley. But the smell is the same, that wet dog and copper combination that makes my primitive brain scream warnings. I approach from above, belly crawling to the edge to look down. Forensics teams are working the bottom, photographing and cataloging. Bodies have already been removed, but I can see the discoloration where they lay, the organized spaces where gear was arranged. And there, on a massive Douglas fir that must be 300 years old, the carved words Agent Vasquez described. Where is he? 17 times, each one deeper than the last, as if frustration grew with every repetition. The letters are crude but clear, carved by something with immense strength but limited practice with written language. They learned to write. In 3 years, they learned to write English, to ask questions, to look for answers. I'm backing away from the edge when I hear it, that vocalization, the one that haunted my dreams for 3 years. Low at first, felt more than heard, then rising to that impossible pitch that makes every instinct scream run. But I don't run, can't run, because this time I came here to answer. The FBI agents below are scrambling, radios crackling with panicked chatter. Someone's screaming about movement in the trees. Someone else is calling for helicopter support. Weapons are drawn, voices raised, chaos spreading through what had been an orderly crime scene. I stand up, walk to the edge where they can see me, where it can see me. I'm here, I say, not shouting, not even raising my voice much, but I know it can hear me. Know it's been waiting for this answer for 3 years. The forest goes silent, not quiet, silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even the FBI agents have stopped moving, all looking up at me standing on the ravine's edge like I've lost my mind. Then, from directly behind me, close enough that I feel breath on my neck, "You came back." The words are rough, shaped by a throat never meant for human speech, but they're clear, understandable, impossible. I turn slowly, every movement deliberate and non-threatening. And there it is. It, he, they. I don't know which pronoun fits something that shouldn't exist but clearly does. 9 feet tall at least, covered in reddish-brown hair that's darker where the rain has soaked it. Massive shoulders that block out the trees behind. Arms that could tear me in half without effort. And eyes, brown, intelligent, so very aware, that hold mine without aggression or fear. "You left," it says, the words coming easier this time. Why? I was afraid, I answer honestly. Behind me, I can hear the FBI agents shouting, but they seem very far away. Of us. Of what would happen to you if I told the truth. It tilts its head, a gesture so human it makes my chest ache. You protected us. Not a question, a statement of understood fact. I tried. It reaches out slowly, giving me time to retreat. I don't. One massive hand, fingers longer than my entire hand, touches the pocket where the basalt stone sits. You kept it. I pull out the stone, offer it on my palm. It takes it carefully, the brief contact of its fingers against my skin warmer than I expected, more human than I was prepared for. Where is he? I ask, gesturing at the carved words visible below. Something that might be a smile crosses its face, though the features are too different for me to be sure. You. We were looking for you. Why? It considers the question, that massive head tilting again. Then it does something that breaks my understanding of the world more than its mere existence ever could. It sits down, cross-legged like a child in kindergarten, and pats the ground beside it. An invitation, a request, a bridge across species that shouldn't be possible. I sit. Below us, the FBI agents are losing their minds. I can hear Agent Vasquez's voice, sharp with authority, ordering everyone to hold positions, to not engage, to wait for her command. She's smart. She knows something unprecedented is happening. We remember, it says, looking not at me but at the ravine below. Everyone, every name. The hikers. A nod. Very human. Very sad. We didn't mean to at first. They came into the deep places. Sacred places. Secret places. We tried to warn them. It struggles with the words, but pushes through. Some didn't listen. So you killed them? No. The word is sharp. Offended. Not killed. Defended. Protected territory. Protected family. Your kind would understand this. I think about castle doctrine, stand your ground laws, the human tendency to violence when threatened. We would. We do. But then, it pauses, searching for words. We learned it was wrong, learned your kind mourns, looks for the lost, so we kept them, organized, remembered, waited. Waited for what? For someone like you, someone who could see us and not. Another pause. Not destroy. The weight of that lands like a physical blow. They'd been collecting bodies for 20 years, waiting for someone to discover them who wouldn't immediately expose their existence. Waiting for someone who would understand the impossible choice between truth and protection. How did you learn English? Something that's definitely a smile now. Hikers talk. We listen. 20 years of listening. Learning. Radio devices sometimes still work. Phones, too. Christ. They'd been listening to our communications, our conversations, our media, learning not just language but culture, context, nuance. No wonder the organization of remains had seemed so deliberate. They'd been creating a crime scene that would make sense to us, that would give closure while protecting their secret. There are others, I ask, though I already know the answer. Few now, fewer each year. The forests shrink, safe places disappear, young ones die. How many? It holds up both hands, spreads all fingers, then closes them and spreads them again. 20, maybe 30, an entire species reduced to a population that could fit in a school bus. Agent Vasquez, I call down, not looking away from those brown eyes. I need you to pull your people back, all of them. Give us the ravine. Like hell, comes the response. Please, this is. I struggle for words that will convince her without destroying everything. This is bigger than a crime scene. This is a first contact situation. Silence from below. Then movement as agents start pulling back, Vasquez's authority overriding their confusion. She's giving me rope, trusting me not to hang myself with it. When the last agent disappears into the trees, it stands, towering over me. Come, it says, and starts down into the ravine. I follow. The bottom is different without the FBI presence. Older, heavier with meaning. It shows me where each body had lain, speaks their names. Rebecca Morrison, Thomas Chen, Maria Santos, David Whitehorse. Names I'd read in files, given voices, stories, humanity. This one, it points to a smaller depression, was young, lost, crying for 3 days. We tried to lead her out, but she ran, fell. It touches its chest. We failed her. The pink and purple shoe, the child I'd wondered about. Her name was Ashley, I say, remembering the missing persons report. Ashley Kim, 6 years old, wandered away from a family camping trip. It nods, commits the name to whatever vast memory allows it to remember decades of collected dead. Ashley. We will remember Ashley. Why show me this? Because you came back. Because you kept our secret. Because. It struggles again, then switches to something that might be its own language, a series of low rumbles and clicks that somehow convey meaning without words. Trust, respect, hope. What do you need from me? It looks at me for a long moment, then speaks carefully, each word chosen with obvious effort. We need to not disappear, not like the others. Others? It gestures at the forest around us, the wolves that were, the great cats, the birds that darkened skies, all gone. We are last of the large ones, last of the old ones. When we go, only stories remain. I think about all the species we've lost, all the ones we're losing. Add one more that we never even officially knew existed. How can I help? Keep the secret, but also... It pauses, looks up at where Agent Vasquez waits invisible in the trees. Make them understand. Not about us, but about the places, the deep places, sacred places. Make them off limits, protected, so we can survive. A sanctuary, wildlife preserve, wilderness designation, all possible without ever mentioning what we're really protecting. I can try, I say, but I'm just one person, former ranger, no authority anymore. You have this. It touches my chest, right over my heart. Truth. They will feel it. Maybe, or maybe they'll think I've lost my mind. But looking at this impossible being, this bridge between human and something else, I know I have to try. The bodies, I say. The FBI needs them. The families need closure. It nods. We understand. We kept them for this, for you to find, to give back. But, it looks around the ravine. We need a new place now, a place they won't look. Deeper forest, further from trails. Yes, and we need. Another pause, searching for concepts it's only learned through overheard conversation. Agreement, understanding, boundaries, a treaty. It's asking for a treaty between species that have never formally acknowledged each other's existence. I'll need proof, I say. Something to show the right people, not public, not media, but someone who can make the protections happen. It considers this, then holds out its hand. In the palm is a tuft of hair, carefully pulled, not torn, roots intact. For your science, to prove we are, but not to prove where we are. I take the hair, knowing exactly who to send it to, a geneticist I knew from my ranger days who now works in species preservation, someone who can verify without exposing. There's more, I say. The families of the missing. They'll want to know how, why. Tell them. It looks at the spots where bodies had lain. Tell them it was territory, misunderstanding, old one, before we learned better, old one now gone. A lie, but one that protects. Tell them their loved ones are remembered, always remembered. Above us, rain starts again, soft and steady. It looks up, lets the water run down its face in a gesture so human, I forget for a moment that this is impossible. You were afraid, it says, 3 years ago, but also sad. We felt it. Why sad? The question catches me off guard. My wife had just died. Cancer. 6 months before I found the ravine. I was hiking to not think about it for a while. It nods slowly. Grief. We know grief. When one of us passes, we all mourn, all remember. It looks at me with those impossible brown eyes. We remember her too now, through you. I have to look away, the kindness too much from something that shouldn't exist. I should go, I say, before they come looking. Yes, but first. It stands, walks to the carved tree, places one massive hand over the repeated question. Where is he? Then looks at me. Here. The answer is here. It takes me a moment to understand. Then I place my hand next to its on the tree, covering part of the carved words. Here, I agree. We stand like that for a moment. Two species that shouldn't be communicating, sharing a truth that can't be proved. Then it steps back, begins to fade into the forest in that impossible way they have of disappearing, despite their size. Wait, I call. What do I call you? Do you have names? It turns back, and this time the smile is unmistakable. You call us Sasquatch, Bigfoot, ape men. We call ourselves. Again that rumbling language that bypasses words. But you can call me. It thinks, then makes a sound like wind through trees mixed with distant thunder. I can't pronounce that. Then call me what your mate called you, when she was soft, happy. The word breaks me a little. Bear. She called me Bear. Bear, it repeats, tasting the word. I am Bear. Then it's gone, melted into the forest like smoke, leaving me standing alone in a ravine full of ghosts and rain. I climb out slowly, joints protesting the effort. Agent Vasquez is waiting at the top, hand on her weapon, but not drawn. Talk, she says. So I do. Not everything, not the parts that would destroy them, but enough. I tell her about territorial disputes, about a species we've never catalogued that's trying to survive in shrinking wilderness, about intelligence that learned from mistakes, about the need for protected spaces, real protection, not just on paper. She listens without interrupting, rain dripping from her FBI windbreaker, expressions cycling through disbelief, amazement, and finally something like acceptance. You have proof? I show her the hair. DNA analysis will confirm unknown primate, close to human but distinct. Maybe close enough for protective status under expanded interpretation of human rights law. Jesus. She runs a hand through her wet hair. You're serious. Look at the carvings. Look at the organization of remains. Look at 20 years of consistent behavior patterns. This isn't an animal. It's not human either. It's something in between that we have no framework for. And you talk to it, to him. I did. And he can speak English. Learned, from listening to us, to hikers, radios, phones, 20 years of immersion learning. She's quiet for a long moment, processing the impossible. What does he want? To survive, to not go extinct, for us to leave certain areas alone so they can exist without conflict. And if we don't? I think about Bear's careful organization of remains, the respect shown even in death, but also the strength that carved words inches deep in old-growth wood, the speed that could outpace a running human. Then they'll defend themselves, and more hikers will disappear. She looks at the ravine, at the tree with its desperate repeated question. This is insane. Yes. No one will believe it. No. Which is why we don't tell them. We push for habitat protection based on other factors. Endangered species that actually are catalogued. Watershed protection. Carbon sequestration. Whatever works. And them? They'll stay hidden? They've done it this long. They just need space to do it in. She pulls out her phone, starts typing. I'm calling in a specialized team. Scientists who won't ask the wrong questions. We'll process this scene as a historical site, not active crime. The families get their closure, the media gets their story about the serial killer dumping ground, and And they get their space. She looks at me, really looks at me. You gave up everything for this secret. Not gave up, traded, for something more important. You know I'll be watching you, making sure you don't go public, don't write a book, don't try to capitalize. I know. And you know this makes you the only official liaison between the United States government and... She gestures at the forest. Whatever they are. I hadn't thought of it that way, but she's right. I guess it does. Congratulations. You've just become the least public and most important diplomat in history. 3 months later, I'm back in Washington permanently. Officially, I'm a consultant for the newly formed Pacific Northwest Wilderness Conservation Initiative, a joint federal-state program that just received $100 million in funding to preserve critical habitat. Unofficially, I'm exactly what Agent Vasquez said, a diplomat to a species that doesn't exist on paper. The DNA results came back exactly as expected. Unknown primate, genetically distinct, but closer to human than any great ape. The scientist I sent it to nearly had a breakdown, then agreed to keep it quiet in exchange for being part of the secret research team. We now have 3 geneticists, 2 anthropologists, and 1 linguist who know the truth, all sworn to secrecy, all working on understanding without exposing. I meet Bear once a month, always in different locations, always deep in the new protected zones. We're working on establishing sustainable territories, teaching them about our technology so they can avoid it better, learning about their culture and needs. There are 24 of them left in the Pacific Northwest, another dozen in Northern California, maybe 40 in British Columbia, a few scattered groups in Alaska and the Rockies. Less than 100 total of a species that once ranged from coast to coast. They have language, complex, nuanced, poetic in its connection to the natural world. They have art. We've found caves with paintings that predate human presence in the Americas. They have medicine, herbal knowledge that makes our pharmacology look primitive. They have history, oral traditions stretching back to the Ice Age. And they have names, each one distinct, meaningful, earned through action or characteristic. Bear, who earned his name through size and protective nature. Whisper, a female who moves so silently, even others of her kind rarely hear her coming. Stone, an elder who remembers when humans first arrived in these forests. Little Sun, a juvenile whose hair is lighter than the others, almost golden in direct light. They mourn their dead for exactly 1 year, visiting the body daily if possible, leaving gifts of food and decorated stones. They celebrate births with a gathering of all groups within traveling distance, singing, that's the only word for it, for 3 days straight. They teach their young for a decade before they're considered adult. They know which plants cure infection, which ones ease pain, which combinations can treat what we call cancer. They track the health of the forest through signs we don't even recognize as significant. They can predict weather changes days in advance through pressure sensations in their bones. And they're dying out, not from violence or disease, but from simple mathematics. Too few breeding pairs, territories too fragmented for genetic diversity, young ones often dying from minor injuries or illness that wouldn't have been fatal with a larger support group. Bear estimates they have maybe 30 years before the population crashes below recovery potential, maybe 50 if they're lucky. Unless, he told me last week, his English now fluent enough for complex ideas, we change the secret, make it known, protect it officially. That's a death sentence and you know it, I replied. The moment you're proven to exist, every trophy hunter, every scientist, every media outlet in the world will descend on these forests. Then we fade into story, like the dire wolves, like the great birds, like all the others who couldn't adapt to your world. He wasn't bitter about it, just matter of fact. They've watched too many species disappear to have illusions about their own chances. There has to be another way, I said. Find it, he replied. You have the clever minds, the machines that think, the ways to solve problems. Find the way to save us, without destroying us. So that's what I'm trying to do, working with Agent Vasquez, now Deputy Director Vasquez of the task force, to create legal protections for a species that officially doesn't exist, creating sanctuary zones based on potential habitat for undiscovered primates without ever confirming said primates exist, pushing through legislation that makes certain areas off-limits to development, mining, logging, even hiking. It's working, slowly. 3 million acres now protected under various justifications. Another 5 million in the proposal stage. Enough to give them room, maybe. Enough to buy time. But it's not enough for the future. Not enough for genetic diversity. Not enough for a species to thrive rather than just survive. Unless... The thought came to me last night, reading through historical accounts of human-Sasquatch interactions. Most are brief, terrifying, ending in the human fleeing, but a few, a precious few, describe something different. Communication, trade, even friendship. There's a pattern there. The positive interactions all involve people who were alone, often for extended periods, people who had already stepped outside mainstream society, hermits, outlaws, indigenous individuals maintaining traditional practices, people who could keep secrets because they had no one to tell or no one who would believe them. What if we could find more such people, create a network of silent guardians, protectors who know the truth but are bound by something stronger than law to keep it? Not many, a few dozen maybe, scattered across the range, enough to monitor, to warn, to help when needed. I'm drafting the proposal now, calling it the Wilderness Guardian Program, ostensibly for monitoring remote areas for poaching, illegal camping, environmental damage, but really, they'd be watching for something else, protecting something else. The selection criteria would be strict, psychological profiles indicating ability to handle isolation and keep secrets, no close family ties that could complicate loyalty, previous experience with wilderness trauma that's been successfully processed, people who've already had their worldview shattered and rebuilt, skills in wilderness medicine, wildlife biology, forest ecology, and most importantly, the capacity for wonder without the need for proof. My niece would be perfect for it in a few years. She's shown she can follow instructions even when she doesn't understand them. Her experience on Thunder Creek Trail, where she listened to my warning and left, proves she has the right instincts, and she loves the wilderness enough to protect it, even from herself. I haven't told Bear about this plan yet. Want to work out the details first, make sure it's feasible, but I think he'll approve. It's a bridge between our worlds, narrow and secret, but perhaps enough to span the gap between existence and extinction. The rain is starting again outside my cabin, a soft patter that sounds like fingers on the roof. I live on the edge of the protected zone now, in a structure that's half house, half observation post. Officially, I'm monitoring for signs of poaching. Unofficially, I'm the early warning system for a species that shouldn't exist. Sometimes, on nights like this, I hear them calling to each other. Not the terrifying roar that sent me running 3 years ago, but something softer, conversational. Once, I swear I heard laughter, deep and resonant, after what sounded like a juvenile's attempt at mimicking a crow. They know I'm here. Leave signs sometimes. A perfectly balanced stone stack where my trail cameras can see it. Flowers on my porch that don't grow below 4,000 feet. Once a salmon, fresh caught and cleaned, when I was recovering from flu and couldn't make it to town for supplies. We're neighbors now, in the strangest sense of the word. The families of the 63 victims have all been notified. The remains returned, the case is closed. Most accepted the serial killer explanation, grateful just to have closure. But a few have reached out to me, sensing there was more to the story. I tell them what I can, that their loved ones' bodies were treated with respect, that they were remembered, that their deaths led to protections that will prevent future tragedies. It's not the whole truth, but it's enough. Rebecca Morrison's mother sends me a Christmas card every year. Thanks me for finding her daughter, for bringing her home. She doesn't know that her daughter's death helped save an entire species. Doesn't know that Rebecca is remembered by beings she never knew existed, her name spoken in a language older than English. Thomas Chen's husband planted a tree in the protected zone, not knowing he was placing it in the territory of the ones who killed his partner. The tree thrives, tended by massive hands that work in darkness, ensuring it gets water during droughts, protection from pests. Ashley Kim's parents created a foundation for wilderness safety education for children. They don't know that their daughter's pink and purple shoe led to a conversation between species, to understanding that transcended death. Each victim, each family, each story is woven into something larger now, a tapestry of loss and discovery, tragedy and hope, death and possible redemption. But redemption requires survival, and survival requires adaptation. Last week, Bear showed me something that shattered my understanding once again. In a cave, hidden behind a waterfall, protected by centuries of secrecy, walls covered in pictographs. Not primitive drawings, but complex astronomical charts, mathematical equations using a base 12 system, maps of underground water systems that our best geologists haven't discovered. We were scientists once, Bear explained, running a massive finger along an equation I couldn't begin to understand. Before you came, before we had to become shadows. The implications are staggering. A parallel civilization that chose concealment over conflict, that abandoned advancement for survival. How different might our world be if they'd remained in the open, if we'd developed together instead of apart? But that's not the world we have. The world we have is one where they're down to double digits, where every death brings them closer to extinction, where the best I can offer is secret protection that might buy them a few more decades. Unless, the word keeps coming back, unless we find another way, unless something changes, unless. Bear says they've survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, the arrival of humans, and the Industrial Revolution. Says they'll survive this too, even if it means evolving into something unrecognizable. But I hear the doubt in his voice, see it in the way he watches little son play, knowing the juvenile might be among the last of his kind to reach adulthood. There has to be another way. I'm documenting everything now. Not for publication, not for proof, but for possibility. If we fail, if they fade into extinction despite our efforts, at least there will be a record. Secret, hidden, protected, but real. Evidence that we shared this world with something magnificent and chose in the end to protect rather than expose. Agent Director Vasquez calls it insurance. I call it hope. Hope that someday, when we're ready, when we've evolved past our need to capture and contain everything we don't understand, the record can be released. That future generations will know what we saved or what we lost. That the names Bear speaks with such reverence, Rebecca, Thomas, Ashley, and all the others, will be remembered not as victims, but as catalysts for the greatest secret conservation effort in history. It's been 4 years since I found that first ravine. 4 years of secrets, lies, half-truths, and impossible choices. 4 years of being the bridge between worlds that shouldn't touch but do. My sister thinks I've found peace in my return to Washington, that I've reconciled with the wilderness that traumatized me. She's not wrong exactly. I have found peace. Just not the kind she imagines. It's the peace of purpose, of knowing that every day I maintain this secret, I buy them one more day of existence. Every protected acre I help designate gives them room to survive. Every person I carefully turn away from the deep forests keeps both species safe from each other. But it's also the peace of acceptance, that some truths are too large for one person to carry forever, that some secrets demand to be shared, even if that sharing means destruction, that some species, no matter how magnificent, simply run out of time. Bear disagrees, says time is a human concept, that his people measure existence differently, in breaths, in seasons, in generations. Says they've already existed longer than we have, that a few more decades or centuries are just details. But then he watches little son learn to read, actually read from children's books I bring, and I see the weight of potential extinction in his eyes. Teach him everything, Bear told me last visit. Your language, your science, your ways. So if we fade, something of us remains in him. So I do. I teach a juvenile Sasquatch to read and write, to understand human concepts and technology. Not to join our world, that's still impossible, but to navigate it if necessary. To survive, even if it means becoming something neither fully Sasquatch nor fully integrated into human society. It's heartbreaking and hopeful simultaneously. Little son is brilliant, absorbing information like a sponge. He writes now, crude but clear letters in the dirt, asking questions about everything from internal combustion engines to why humans fear death. His favorite book is The Giving Tree, which he's read so many times the pages are soft from his careful handling with massive fingers. The tree is us, he told me once, and I couldn't argue. Director Vasquez has expanded the program. We now have 12 people who know the truth, each managing a different section of protected territory. Each one carefully selected, deeply vetted, bound by legal and ethical obligations that would destroy their lives if broken, but also bound by wonder, by the privilege of knowing something magnificent exists, by the responsibility of protecting it. We call ourselves the Guardians, though never in official documents. We meet quarterly, sharing observations, adjusting protection strategies, maintaining the conspiracy of silence that keeps them safe. One Guardian, Dr. Elizabeth Harper, is working on a breeding program. Not captive, never captive, but assisted. Using pheromone mapping to identify optimal pairings, creating corridors for genetic diversity, even exploring the possibility of artificial insemination using samples freely given. Bear laughed when I explained it, a sound like boulders tumbling. You humans, always trying to control nature. Not control, I corrected. Assist, help, save. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, if it works, if it saves us, we will evolve to depend on you. Is that better than extinction? I didn't have an answer then. Still don't. Another Guardian, Professor James Redhawk, brings indigenous knowledge to our efforts. His grandmother knew the truth, he says. Knew and kept the secret for 70 years, part of an older network of protectors we're only now discovering existed. My people have protocols for this, he told me. Ways of coexisting that go back generations. The problem isn't them, it's you, us, modern humans who've forgotten how to share the world. He's teaching me those protocols now. When to look away, when to leave gifts, when to sing so they know you're coming. How to read the signs that say welcome versus the ones that say go away. The reciprocal relationship that once existed and might again. But it all takes time we might not have. Last month, a logging company filed for exemption to cut in one of the buffer zones. We fought it, won on a technicality, but they'll be back. They always come back. And each time, we have to win without revealing why it matters so much. Bear knows the pressure we're under. Sees the maps I bring showing development creeping closer, the satellite images of their shrinking world. We could show ourselves, he offered once, end the secret, face what comes. You'd be dead within a year, I told him bluntly. Captured, studied, dissected, maybe a few in zoos if you're lucky. Is that better than hidden? At least we'd be remembered. You're already remembered, just not by many. He touched the tree where we were sitting, an ancient cedar that's seen centuries pass. The trees remember everything. Long after we're gone, they'll hold the memory of us in their rings. It was poetic and heartbreaking and true. This morning, I got a call from Director Vasquez. Another hiker missing, this time inside one of the protected zones. Someone who ignored every warning, bypassed every barrier, determined to find something. It's a YouTuber, she said. disgust clear in her voice. Bigfoot hunter, has 1 million followers, was live streaming until the signal cut out. My blood went cold. How much did he broadcast? Enough. Footprints, tree structures, maybe a glimpse of something moving. His followers are going crazy, planning expeditions. This is how it happens, not through government disclosure or scientific discovery, but through social media and the inability to leave any mystery unprobed. I'll find him, I said. Mike, if he's seen them, I know. The implication hung between us. If this YouTuber has proof, real proof, everything we've built falls apart. The protection, the secrecy, the delicate balance that's kept them alive. I'm heading out now, into the deep forest where cell signals die and trails end, where something that shouldn't exist is possibly holding a modern human who definitely shouldn't be there. Bear will be angry, not at me, but at the situation, at the inevitability of discovery in an age where everyone has a camera and thinks they have the right to every secret. I don't know what I'll find. Don't know if the YouTuber is dead, captured, or simply lost. Don't know if this is the end of our careful conspiracy or just another close call. But I know I have to try. Have to maintain the bridge between worlds a little longer, even as it crumbles under the weight of modern humanity's relentless consumption of mystery. 4 years ago, I found a ravine full of bones and ran from something impossible. Today, I run toward it, hoping to save both species from each other once again. The forest is quiet as I enter, that kind of deep silence that suggests everything is watching, waiting. Somewhere out there, Bear is dealing with an intruder in ways I can't predict. Somewhere out there, a man with a camera might be capturing the end of everything we've worked to protect. And somewhere, in a cave behind a waterfall, mathematical equations in base 12 wait on ancient walls, holding secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of intelligence, of civilization, of what it means to be sentient in this world, but only if there's anyone left to read them. I check my pack one more time. Rope, medical supplies, tranquilizers that work on humans, but probably not on them, and a letter from Director Vasquez giving me authority I definitely don't have. Also, at the bottom, wrapped in waterproof fabric, 47 children's books. Payment for information, hopefully. Bribes for a species that's learning to read, because they might need to understand us to survive us. The trail disappears within 100 yards, swallowed by ferns and fallen logs. But I know the way now, know it in my bones and muscles, and the part of my brain that's learned to think like them. I'm 3 hours in when I hear it. Not the terrifying roar, but voices. Actual voices, speaking English with an accent I can't place because the vocal cords producing it aren't human. He won't stop screaming, one says, frustration clear. Let him scream, another replies. This one I recognize. Bear. He wanted to find us. He found us. I push through the last barrier of vegetation and enter a clearing I've never seen before. The YouTuber is there, alive but zip-tied to a tree with his own equipment. His camera lies in pieces nearby, methodically destroyed. Bear turns to me, and in his eyes I see exhaustion deeper than physical tiredness. He live-streamed for 17 minutes, Bear says. 17 minutes of our home, our signs, Stone's back as he walked away. You're back? I ask Stone, the elder who rarely shows himself. Stone steps forward, and I understand. His hair is going white with age, but in a pattern that's almost like writing. Natural marking that could, to the right eye, seem like proof of something beyond normal biology. How many saw? Stone asks, his English careful but clear. By now? Millions, probably. The internet doesn't forget. The YouTuber starts screaming again, terror making his words incomprehensible. Bear looks at him with something between pity and disgust. What do we do with him? Bear asks me. If we let him go, he tells everyone where we are. If we keep him. He doesn't finish, but we both know keeping him means killing him eventually. I walk over to the YouTuber, crouch down to his level. He's young, maybe 25, with the kind of carefully groomed beard that suggests more time in front of mirrors than in actual wilderness. "What's your name?" I ask. It takes him 3 tries to answer. Jake Morrison. Morrison. The universe has a sick sense of humor. Any relation to Rebecca Morrison? His eyes widen. My sister. She disappeared 20 years ago. Of course she did. Of course this is about her. I look at Bear, see he's made the connection too. Rebecca Morrison, one of the 63, found in that first ravine. Her brother, coming to find answers, finding more than he bargained for. Your sister is dead, I tell Jake bluntly. Has been for 20 years. We found her remains in 2019, returned them to your family. I know, he gasps, but I needed to know what killed her. Territory, Bear says, stepping forward. Jake tries to press himself through the tree he's tied to. She entered territory during mating season, was warned to leave, didn't understand the warning. You killed her? Jake's voice cracks. Not me. Another. Now dead. Bear crouches down, massive frame folding until he's eye level with Jake. We mourned her, kept her safe, remembered her name. Rebecca Morrison of Portland, 24 years old, carried a blue pack with a rainbow patch, liked to sing while she walked. Jake starts crying, ugly sobs that shake his whole body. How do you know that? We watched her for 3 days before she entered the forbidden place. Tried to lead her around it. She was stubborn, like you. I pull out my phone, show Jake the photo I've carried for 4 years. His sister's ID, found in that ravine. She was one of 63 we found, all killed over 20 years, all for the same reason. Entering territory that was clearly marked as dangerous, if you knew how to read the signs. Marked how? He demands through tears. Bear stands, walks to the nearest tree, and demonstrates. A series of breaks, scratches, and knocks that would seem random to most, but create a clear pattern once you know what to look for. This means death, Bear says simply. Any of us who see this know to go another way. Your kind doesn't see, doesn't understand, so you die. That's not fair, Jake protests. Fair? Stone speaks up, his aged voice carrying authority. Is it fair that you've taken 90% of our territory? Is it fair that we number less than 100 when once we were thousands? Is it fair that we must hide from you to survive? Jake has no answer for that. I make a decision that might doom us all. Jake, I'm going to tell you the truth. All of it. And then you're going to have to make a choice that will define the rest of your life. So I tell him. About finding the ravine, about Bear letting me go, about the protection program, about the 63 victims who became catalysts for conservation, about little son learning to read, about the mathematical equations in the hidden cave, about a species on the edge of extinction trying to coexist with one that doesn't know they exist. Jake listens, his terror slowly morphing into something else. Wonder, maybe, or horror at a different level. When I'm done, he's quiet for a long moment. Then, the live stream. People saw. Yes. They'll come looking. Yes. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Bigfoot hunters, scientists, media. Yes. He looks at Bear, at Stone, at the forest around us. They'll destroy everything. Yes. Unless. And there it is. The same word that haunts me. Unless. Unless you help us, I say. You have 1 million followers. They trust you. You could tell them it was a hoax. Elaborate costume, paid actors, viral marketing for something. Lie to them. To save them. I gesture at Bear and Stone. And to save your followers from coming here and becoming victims themselves. Jake is smart enough to understand the threat implicit in that. What about my sister? Bear moves closer, and Jake doesn't flinch this time. Your sister's death was tragedy. Mistake. If we could undo, we would. But we can honor her memory by learning, by finding way to coexist, by making sure no one else dies for misunderstanding. You want me to betray everything I've built my channel on, my credibility, my mission to prove Bigfoot exists. No, Stone says. We want you to evolve your mission, from proving we exist to ensuring we continue to exist. How? And that's when Little Son appears, carrying his stack of books. He sets them down carefully, picks up the giving tree, and hands it to Jake. This is my favorite, Little Son says in perfect, if careful, English. The tree gives everything until there's nothing left. We don't want to be the tree. Jake stares at the juvenile Sasquatch holding a children's book, his entire worldview crumbling and rebuilding in real time. You can read. Learning, Little Son corrects. Mike teaches me, Bear teaches me, books teach me. This is. Jake stops, starts again. This is impossible. Yes, I agree. And it's also real. And it needs protection more than it needs proof. Jake looks at his destroyed camera, at the zip ties holding him, at the impossible beings surrounding him. If I say no, Bear and Stone exchange glances. It's Bear who answers. Then you disappear, like your sister, like the others who wouldn't listen. We add your belongings to new collection, remember your name, mourn you for 1 year. And if I say yes, then you become guardian, Stone says, keeper of secret, protector of the protected, bridge between worlds. And my sister? Your sister is why you're here, I tell him. Why you found them, why they found you. Maybe this is her legacy, not exposing them, but saving them. Jake is crying again, quieter this time. She would have loved this, knowing they're real, knowing they're more than animals. We are not more than animals, Bear corrects. We are animals, as are you, just different kinds. Jake nods, processing. Then, the live stream. My followers are probably freaking out. I pull out my satellite phone. Call them, tell them whatever you need to. Make them believe it was fake. And then? Then you help us figure out how to survive the age of surveillance and social media. He looks at Little Son, who's opened The Giving Tree and is carefully sounding out words. You're teaching him to read so he can survive us. Yes. That's... He pauses, searching for words. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. No, Stone says. Saddest thing is teaching him to read, because soon there might be no others of us for him to talk to. That silences everyone. Finally, Jake nods. Cut me loose. I'll make the call. Bear produces a knife from somewhere, slices through the zip ties with disturbing ease. Jake rubs his wrists, then takes the phone I offer. The next hour is fascinating to watch. Jake transforms from terrified victim to performance artist, spinning a story about an elaborate hoax he staged to test his followers' gullibility. He's convincing, adding details about hired actors, special effects, even claiming the destroyed camera was intentional to add authenticity. His followers buy it. Mostly. There'll be skeptics. There always are. But the immediate threat passes. When he's done, he hands back the phone and looks at Bear. I'm sorry. About my sister. About invading. About everything. Bear nods, accepting the apology with dignity. What now? Jake asks. Now, I say, you become part of the solution instead of the problem. How? Your channel has 1 million followers. People interested in mysteries, in the unknown. What if instead of hunting Bigfoot, you started teaching wilderness respect, indigenous protocols, the importance of leaving some mysteries unsolved? They'd unsubscribe in droves. Some would. Others might surprise you. Jake looks skeptical, but doesn't argue. And them? He gestures at Bear, Stone, and Little Son. What happens to them? We survive, Bear says simply. Day by day, season by season, with your help or without it, but better with it. Can I? Jake pauses, seems to gather courage. Can I come back? Learn more? Document this properly, even if I can never share it? Stone answers before I can. If you prove trustworthy, yes. Knowledge kept safe is better than ignorance. And so Jake Morrison, who came here to expose them, becomes another guardian, another keeper of impossible secrets, another bridge between worlds that shouldn't touch but must. We walk out together, Jake and I, leaving them to their forest and their privacy. He's quiet for most of the journey, processing everything. Finally, as we near the trailhead, he speaks. My sister died not knowing what killed her. Yes. But they remembered her, mourned her. Yes. That's something, I guess. It's everything, I tell him. In the end, being remembered is all any of us can hope for. He nods, looks back at the forest. I'm going to need therapy. Director Vasquez can arrange that. Cleared therapists who understand classified information. This is classified? At levels you can't imagine. We reach our vehicles. His van is exactly what I expected, covered in Bigfoot stickers. I want to believe, plastered across the back window. That's going to have to change, I observe. Yeah. He runs a hand over a sticker showing the classic Patterson-Gimlin figure. This seems almost insulting now. They're nothing like this. No, they're more. And less, he adds. More human, less monster, more tragic, less frightening. Still frightening, I correct. Never forget that. They're not our friends. They're not pets. They're a sovereign species trying to survive us. He nods, understanding. What do I tell my family? Whatever you need to, just not the truth. My mom will want to know if I found anything about Rebecca. I think about Rebecca's name being spoken in a language older than English, about her belongings carefully preserved for 2 decades, about Bear knowing she liked to sing. Tell her Rebecca was remembered, that she mattered, that her death led to protection for the places she loved. But not the truth. The truth would destroy her, and them. Jake gets in his van, starts the engine. Through the window he asks, does it get easier, carrying this secret? No, but it gets more necessary. He drives away, and I know he'll be back. They always come back, the ones who truly see them. The weight of that knowledge doesn't let you stay away. I head to my cabin to write my report for Director Vasquez. Another close call managed, another guardian recruited, another day of extinction delayed. Outside, night is falling. Somewhere in the darkness, Bear is teaching little son about territory boundaries. Stone is sharing stories with the few young ones left. Whisper is moving through the forest like smoke, checking the borders of their shrinking world. And I sit at my desk, documenting it all in files that may never be read, that may be destroyed to protect them, or that may someday be the only proof they ever existed. 4 years ago, I found a ravine full of bones and evidence of something impossible. Today, I'm part of that impossibility, woven into a secret that spans species, bridges worlds, and asks the hardest question humanity faces. Can we share this planet with something that challenges our supremacy, or are we doomed to destroy everything we don't understand? I don't know the answer, but I know that tonight, in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, something impossible continues to exist, continues to remember, continues to hope, and as long as they do, so do I. The phone rings. Director Vasquez. We have a problem, she says without preamble. Satellite imagery picked up heat signatures in the protected zone. Large, bipedal, moving in ways that don't match human or known wildlife. My blood runs cold. How detailed? Detailed enough that someone's going to start asking questions. Can you suppress it? Already did. But Mike, if satellites can see them now, it's only a matter of time. Technology is getting too good. The secret's getting too hard to keep. I think about little son reading his books, about Bear's tired eyes, about Stone's white-streaked fur that looks like writing. Then we'd better make sure that when the secret breaks, the world is ready for it. How do we make the world ready for this? I look out my window at the darkness between the trees, where impossible things move with intelligence and purpose and diminishing hope. I don't know, but we'd better figure it out fast. Because unless we do, unless we find a way, unless we evolve past our need to own and control everything we discover, they're finished. And a part of us, the part that needs mystery and wonder and the knowledge that we're not alone in our intelligence, will die with them. The forest holds its breath, waiting. So do I.